My first body of work that I did when I was a third-year art student was a series called Das Mädchen sprach von Liebe, which is a Schubert quote, Winterreise, from the first song of Schubert's Winterreise. And the making of this series coincided with the moment when I finished my science studies. I graduated from the university with a master's degree in chemistry, and that was a very, I would say that was the first decisive moment in my life as a young artist, because leaving behind that very rigorous academic world enabled me to jump into the arms of the intuition, if you allow this cliche kind of expression, meaning that I could start to work with my emotions, my background, my history as a young woman and young human being. And it was really a moment when so many things started to come up that I had earlier sort of pushed back or repressed in my life. That was also an epoch where quite many women, especially women I would say, were doing introspective work about female identity or representation of the female body in art. So in a way it was in the air. Also in my class there were two girls. I always want to give them homage because they inspired me to embark on this autobiographical working. There's Aino Kannisto and Maarit Hohteri, who encouraged me to start to work on myself. So Das Mädchen sprach von Liebe sort of just happened. I mean, we were very free already at that time of studies. I mean, I was going to finish my BA that spring, so it was like independent work, but it was done in the secure framework of an art school. So I had my professors, I had my fellow students with whom I could discuss the work and show it and get feedback. And I did get a lot of encouragement for that work, both from teachers and from fellow students. And I think that was very important to make me understand that I'm doing something meaningful here. And I remember in the beginning, when I did the first self-portraits, I remember it was a shock to see myself in the picture, because I had this idea, I had this like a mental image or a body image of myself where I sort of looked like, when I was 13. And then I was 25 and I didn't look the same as in my head. And I was like, oh my God, this looks awful. I can't ever show this. And it took a while to sort of get acquainted with my image and start to like my image. And, nowadays I'm just like completely, accepting, in the acceptance and in the kind of à l'aise, as they say in French, about what I look like. And this is something I always want to tell to younger people, to young colleagues or students of mine when they are sort of uneasy about what they look like in the picture. I tell them, it's going to be easier. If you want to continue using yourself in your pictures, you'll be sure that, after 5 years, it's going to be a lot easier already. You get used to it, and it becomes like in a way, I think of the form of my body or of my figure, I think of it like as a word in my vocabulary. Mm-hmm. It's like an icon, like a recognizable image that is also developing within time. So what is so fun with a retrospective exhibition is that you can actually see the development of that form from 1997 till 2018. It's the same and it's not the same. The title of this exhibition is It's Not Me, It's a Photograph. The early work was something very strong for me because it was very personal, and I was so young that I was rather vulnerable when putting it out to exhibitions for the very first time. My work goes in cycles, like this, from autobiography to art history, back to autobiography, back to art history. This is something I have been realizing when kind of watching it later. Because autobiography is also something that I'm not particularly searching for, or, you know, it comes when the necessity comes. And the second time it happened to me after Das Mädchen sprach von Liebe was like 15 years later, when I tried to become a mother and it didn't happen, it didn't work out. So I did a series depicting this process that I call Annunciation. It's about the angel who didn't show up. And this body of work, I don't particularly like talking about it. When I made it into a book, I chose not to put any text in the book. It's only the pictures. You see it or you don't see it. But there's nothing you can really explain. When I graduated from art school, that was the same time when I had kind of gone through or finished my first autobiographical phase. I had moved to France, and I had sort of tackled the first shock of being in a country where you don't speak the language. And I used that fact to make a series called Suite Française, where I'm learning French by post-it stickers. That was like the last autobiographical element in my work back then. And then, you know, I started to travel a lot for exhibitions. I went to museums everywhere where I went. So I started to build up like this iconographical image bank in my head. And then it happened so that I was in Iceland for an exhibition, and I had a discussion with the gallerist Edda Jonsdottir from I8 was the name of the gallery, and she said, like, talking about my work and photography of that time in general, that for her, photography is like the new painting. That photographers now are taking those like basic questions of visual art that have been like the realm of painters until our times. Because photography can be large format, it can be color, it can be, you know, anything that painting can be, except that you don't have the brush strokes. And I thought, that's really something that I feel is true, for me at least. And then when I had my extra days in Iceland after the opening to do some new work, I didn't really know what I was doing, but having that conversation in mind, it actually became the start of this new series, the new painting, that I worked on between the year 2000 and 2005. It was very different from what I did before, because it had no autobiography whatsoever. I was using myself in the images because that's what I had at hand. I was, you know, in the Icelandic wilderness and there was absolutely no people. So if I wanted a human presence in my picture, it had to be me or my partner who was traveling with me. So I was in the picture, but I wasn't there for telling any personal stories. I was there as a model. That's the whole point of the new painting. My presence is the presence of a human figure, of a model who is there for the, let's say, investigation of composition, of light, of how the lines go, how, you know, the light is drawing plastically the figure, etc. After 5 years of the new painting, I thought, okay, it's time to change title. I was still interested in the same topic, that is, you know, the human figure in a space, outdoors or indoors. And I thought, I want to do something called model studies. So to underline the fact that even if you see me, it's not me, it's a model. And after that, I did another series called Artist and Her Model. And there I wanted to particularly articulate the fact that the model and the artist can also be one and the same. So me, I'm both in front of the camera and behind the camera at the same time. I have realized that I work very well in the so-called nature, outdoors where you can, you see far. I don't work well in cities, in the exterior. The cityscape is too messy. I cannot find a way to simplify it in such a way that it would make a meaningful composition for me. So when I'm working in the city, I tend to work in interiors. And this is something that I have been particularly interested in, say, since 2015, when I did a series called Les Femmes de la Maison Carrée. Maison Louis Carré is the only house in France drawn by the Finnish architect Alvar Aalto in the 1950s. And I was invited to do a little series there. I just arrived with a suitcase full of clothing that I thought could perhaps fit into the spaces that I would discover in the house. And then I was just pretending that I'm these people, I'm these women who are maybe some relatives of the owner of the house, or some people visiting for some parties, or, very loosely. But I enjoyed it immensely. And since then, I have been kind of constantly looking for what I call iconic houses, where I could sort of create a narrative of somebody who could have lived there, or who has something to do with that particular space. And this is also what I'm doing here in Vienna since January. It's a new chapter in this iconic houses series. I have been working in the Hundertwasser apartment upstairs when I have had a free moment from preparing the exhibition, and I enjoy it very much. The recent work that I have been making is a lot more playful than anything from the past. I ended up in a situation where I realized that, 20 years in front of the camera, I feel that I've used all the positions I can make with this body of mine. I could have had a perfect location and everything was ready, the camera is there, and then I just don't have an idea what to do in front of the camera. So the solution for this came from art history again, but this time from much more recent art history, from the 1960s, the very loose artistic movement called Fluxus that started simultaneously in Germany and then in the United States, and then it has been all around the world, like Japan, Scandinavia, everywhere. So the point of Fluxus artists was that they wrote a little instruction called an event score that explained what a piece could be like. It could be a little performance. I mean, they didn't talk about performances, they talked about events. But anyway, it would describe what to do to whomever would like to do the piece. And I have started to collect these instructions and do them in my own way. So the pictures look like my pictures, but I don't have to invent what to do. That's the wonderful thing about it. I won a prize with this working method last year in Paris. The series was called Règles du jeu, like rules of the game, and it was presented at the Pompidou Center in the autumn 2017. And that's something I still like to continue with, this way of working. For the Règles du jeu series, I had a very nice collaborator who was a friend of mine, dancer and choreographer from Finland, Veera Nevanlinna. So the two of us are in all of the pictures together. And then when I got the invitation to do the show here in KUNST HAUS, you proposed very generously that I could do some new work for the exhibition, and it would be wonderful if I could find some Austrian artists to work with from their material or their scores and even together with them. So for me, that was a fantastic occasion. I'm very, very, very grateful, thankful that I was able to work with Erwin Wurm, whose 1-minute sculptures I had already started to do on my own, but then that he accepted to do some of them with me. So he's in the pictures with me. I think that's fantastic. And another extraordinary artist, Wally Export, who has also agreed to work with me. This kind of thing I could not have imagined, a year ago. So it's fantastic to already be in such a stage in life that people approach me and propose, would you like to come to our place? Would you like to work here? Would you like to work with these people? What can I say? It's fantastic.